Season of Discovery is officially over. After a little over a year and a half of SOD, Blizzard's Classic team announced that they would no longer be developing new content for this version of the game. The servers would still be live, but that's a wrap on new content. I played off and on the whole way through, putting in tons of hours in the beginning and in the end, while just playing a bit casually in the middle parts. So I wanted to put my full thoughts out there on SOD, the things I liked, the things I didn't like, go through all of it, all the features, and talk about some things that I would like to see in a Classic Plus server that we all know that they're working on. So if you're somehow watching this and you don't know what Season of Discovery really is, it was a new server made to be Classic World of Warcraft, but with a little bit of different stuff added to it. There would be time-gated leveling in different brackets, with each level bracket introducing new abilities, items, quests, and a remixed dungeon turned into a raid. There would also be completely new features introduced throughout the whole season, and we'll get to them because I think some of them are really great and should return, and I think some of them were awful and should not be considered again. Before doing a dozen raids a week on our characters, back at the start of the season, there was these leveling phases, with the first one starting at only a max level of 25, and then the next one moved the max level to 40, and then one more to 50 before eventually we got to go to level 60, which is, the max level. And in theory, I did and still do enjoy the idea of it, because I did like this in the Classic WoW beta back in 2019. And I thought this would be the same fun in Season of Discovery, but these leveling phases, they just lasted way too long, and I get it, they wanted everyone to have enough time to do the new leveling raids a whole bunch, and be able to get all the new gear and play with the new stuff and make new metas and stuff. But these super long waits to progress my character further in level, they just kind of made me lose interest in actively playing the game every day. And I think if they do this again in the future, the leveling phases should be much shorter with like a 1 month maximum, but I'm thinking even more like 2 weeks, and give those raids like a 2 or 3 day lockout. But honestly, I don't think they should do time-gated leveling phases again. Just let people go at their own pace, and if some players blast through and miss a bunch of cool content along the way, well, I think that's on them. So Season of Discovery wanted to give all the classes more abilities to press, with most of them being spells that were added in later expansions of the game, and with each move being bound to a certain piece of gear, so you could only use certain combinations and not all of them all at once. Now, you would unlock these rune abilities from a variety of different things. Some would be quests, some would be you'd come across them randomly while leveling pretty naturally, but some of them would be like super complicated, and it would be impossible for any ordinary player to figure it out without some sort of guide. And with all these new abilities, every class had brand new builds to figure out and much more complicated rotations. And I'd say some classes for sure needed more buttons to press, but in my opinion, I think this went a little too overboard with the runes and how much abilities they added and how much more a lot of the playstyles got. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love some of the quest lines that they had to obtain these abilities. I think next time there should just be way less abilities added, and maybe you just keep the good quest lines in, but like have them at the class trainer, and then, just like how all the other class quests were. That also will make it less confusing on how to get them. So during each of these leveling phases, they would take one of the dungeons from around that level and remix it into like a 10-player raid. All of them being 10 players except for the last one, but we'll get there. We had 3 of these through the leveling process, starting with the level 25 one, Black Fathom Deeps. And honestly, I was a little skeptical at first because BFD was never really like one of my favorite low-level dungeons. I prefer like Wailing Caverns, maybe even Dead Mines. But BFD honestly blew me away. I thought the boss fights were super fun with their mechanics. I thought the new loot was pretty cool. Even like Calrus, he was pretty hard on week 1. But then we got to the level 40 raid. Nomoragan, I don't know how you're supposed to say it. Anyways, this definitely isn't my favorite in the level bracket. I feel like Nomoragan was just a weak choice to begin with. There's so many other cooler dungeons in this bracket that you could have chosen from, and like Nomoragan at level 40 doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, the raid itself that they ended up making, I wasn't really a big fan of it, and the bosses, I didn't look forward to doing it the first time, and after that I never cared to do it a second time. But I did think it was cool of them for adding the green Mechanostrider mount into the raid. That was cool. Keep doing more stuff like that. But then we get to the last level 50 raid, Sunken Temple, and I think Sunken Temple was a great choice for the raid. It looked really cool. I loved how they added Guzu's infamous hardcore death as a body, like NPC. And I did enjoy doing this raid the first time, but didn't really want to do it again a whole lot the second time. And this raid was also 20-man now, which was kind of a problem because we'd been doing 10-man raids for months at this point, gotten used to doing it this way with the smaller groups that we'd been playing with, and now we suddenly needed to double our raid rosters. Now overall, while I didn't hate the level up raids, I don't think I would want them again. I'd rather just have some new dungeons made up completely new along the leveling journey, as well as maybe adding some new loot and some new rooms and bosses to the old dungeons. Now also during these leveling phases, there was these world events focused around PvP, and I won't spend too much time on this because PvP in SOD in general wasn't really the best. There was so much balance issues and people doing like one-shots, and I think the whole PvP needs a workaround in a real Classic Plus server because PvP I think is a very important part of Classic WoW and keeps people playing for a long time. Now the first event was the Ashenvale PvP event, which would have a bunch of these camps with bosses throughout the zone, and the Alliance and the Horde would fight over it. And this was probably the worst of the PvP events, but I personally kind of enjoyed it because I was a level 25 Warlock tank at the time, and they were like super overpowered and just wouldn't die, so I would just have a blast running around killing people and not dying. Now the next one was the STV Blood Moon event, and I think this just highlighted how much of a war zone STV is in Classic already, and now there was an event to earn PvP currency to spend on stuff there. And I did really like this when it first came out because there was this boss named Kodamu. He's still in there, but it took us forever to kill him the first time. It took like multiple days, so it was very fun because it got the whole server together. And the last event that we got was the Blackrock Eruption event, where every hour or every other hour there would be double honor gains from PvP inside of Blackrock Mountain, and the zones on the outside of the mountain would have like a bunch of these high-level enemies spawning during the eruption, which would kind of suck if you were just like trying to level in those zones. But yeah, you know, Blackrock Mountain PvP, but now it's more encouraged, so yeah, it's fun. It'd be more fun if the PvP was better. But overall, I didn't love or hate these events. I just want them to put a little more focus and effort on the PvP, and then I think events like these would just naturally be better. Now this Nightmare Incursions was one of their worst ideas. When these incursions came out, people just used them to blast to the new max level in just a couple of hours and get filthy rich in the process. They did lower the gold and XP gains from these pretty fast, but it was still way easier to do these in blast leveling than, you know, questing out in the real world, so of course that's what people did. And they would do it by just sitting in this one little corner of the world and not playing World of Warcraft. I'll get into this more in a little bit, but Classic WoW, leveling is supposed to be the main part of the game. Yes, we want an extended endgame, but I think we also want more in the leveling process, not just to skip it entirely. And these incursions also just did such a negative hit to the reputation of SOD as a whole, and I think a lot of people didn't like it, and a lot of people didn't come back from this. So please, Blizzard, don't do anything like this again, please. Now, not until max level did we get any new dungeons introduced, and I think that is a shame. I would for sure want brand new dungeons along the way in the leveling process, not just the remixed dungeon raids, but, you know, let's just start with the first one, which was Demonfall Canyon. And I don't have too much to say about this one. I only ever did it once, and it was an okay dungeon, but I feel like it could have easily been a leveling dungeon too. It would have fit in like the 50s level range rather than a level 60 dungeon. And I don't think dungeons either should really have attunements, but if they still wanted to, they could have worked this quest line into the questing that you already do in Felwood with the dungeon as like a finale. But yeah, the dungeon was okay. I don't think it was anything special though, and it was just like out in the open world as an instance. But the next one that they did was Karazhan Crypt, and now this was the good one. Technically, you could get into this place in vanilla if you glitched your way in, but it was just kind of this big empty place that you knew was supposed to be a dungeon or a raid at some point, but it was abandoned like fantasy-wise in the game, but also abandoned by the developers. Until Sod, where they decided to finish it, and they did a fantastic job with this place. I love the way they filled the place up with stuff. I love how the torch mechanic works. It adds a lot of immersion to the dungeon. The only thing I'm mad about is that was it for new dungeons, just the 2 of them. I really hope Classic Plus, they really put a focus on dungeons, especially new ones during the leveling journey. I gotta keep saying that over and over again. Now, normally in World of Warcraft, when you hit level 60, the next step to progressing your character is to do the max level dungeons to get certain gear that drops for your class, which we call the Tier 0 gear. And eventually, you turn this Tier 0 gear into Tier 0.5 gear, which this is normally the best gear you can get before raiding. And sometimes it's even better than the raid gear in certain item slots during certain phases of the game. But now when you're doing these max level dungeons, every boss drops a coin called an undermine reel. And there's a vendor in Booty Bay that will sell you your Tier 0 gear from these undermine reels. So if you're like 20 runs deep bashing your head in that your gear hasn't dropped, you can just buy it with the coins that you farmed just by doing dungeons every day. And if you got your armor normally and you don't need to buy it and you have all those reels, you could spend it on other stuff. There was cool toys and there was a bunch of other items, including these mystery boxes that were full of good stuff to sell in the auction house. So, it was just good to do them no matter what, just to get the reels. This was a great feature, and I hope they add it again in future versions. Now, once we actually got into the raids, there was many more tier sets this time around. In Original Classic, there's only 1 tier set per class, and the bonuses of those tier sets would really determine the playstyle, and they would only be good for a certain playstyle or spec, and pretty much forcing everyone to play that certain way on that class. But now in Season of Discovery, we're getting way more tier sets that are also different colors, which is cool, and they would also just make it so you could play other specs or other playstyles for your class, and this is great. We need this to come back and be the standard. Anyone who thinks this isn't good is wrong. So going around and spending a few hours every week collecting world buffs has to be the most annoying part of the classic WoW endgame, and in Season of Discovery, towards the end, they got rid of this, and now world buffs were just consumables that you could buy, and this was great. We want this back. I would suggest even just selling them for just straight up gold would be better for the economy, because then that's just a bunch of gold being deleted out of the economy to keep it all down. So yes, please bring this back, do this again. We don't like collecting world buffs. Nobody does. And if they say they do, they're lying. They've convinced themselves to stay sane or something. Now, this was my favorite part of Season of Discovery, the secret quest lines where you're traveling all over the world, exploring all the new little spots that they've added inside, collecting some cool toys, seeing these secret agents, wondering what the hell's actually going on here, and there's even like this pretty tough challenge thrown in along the way, but you also get some super useful items. Like the first one you get is a sleeping bag, where if you lay there for a few minutes, you get bonus % XP gains. And at the end of it, you get a bonus Hearthstone that's a necklace. But my favorite part of all this was the Khonsu boss fight, where you'd have to beat this boss 17 times in a row without failing, and if you failed, it would reset and you'd have to start again from 0, and then if you beat it that 17 times in a row, you get these sunglasses, and then if you finish the whole quest line, you get this ninja outfit and flaming eyes, and access to this new room that the developers put like a thank you there. So I love these type of things. I hope they return with way more next time on the next server, because this is like the fun stuff to do when you're not raiding and doing stuff with your guild. So the final patch of Sod was amazing. A bunch of people started playing again, and we got a brand new original raid with the Scarlet Enclave. There was one thing I didn't really like about it, and I'll start with it, and that was the level boosting. You see, in Tenaris, there's all these necropolises that spawn a bunch of enemies that you can get easily boosted to max level in no time. Like, I'm talking a level every 5 minutes where you're just standing there and the guy you paid is just tanking a bunch of them. And the only reason I'm kind of okay with this was because it was a seasonal server, and I get it, all right? It was a seasonal server, it's about to end. So yeah, you know, if everybody had to normally level again, they wouldn't make it. They would just quit, or a lot of them would just not make it in time before the server ended. I even got boosted myself. I'll argue a little bit that mine's different because I joined an alliance guild at the last patch and had to restart. I already had a horde at 60. But let's talk about the raid, the Scarlet Enclave, okay? I absolutely loved this place. I want to see the team keep making more new instances because this was great. I would say maybe the difficulty on the first week was a little bit too much, but that was only week 1, so I was fine with it after that. But the Scarlet Enclave would wrap it up for SOD for good. As the developer said, they'd be moving to work on the next project, which did make me mad because, man, after Scarlet Enclave, I wanted more. Like, I want it now. And I'm sure we'll have to wait up to like 2 years for like Classic Plus. Hopefully it's not that long, okay? Hopefully. But now I do want to talk about my personal experience playing SOD and then my final thoughts. So I played SOD from the beginning. I was there on launch day, playing every single day for so many hours on the first few weeks, and I did everything I could to max out my character, bis farming, all the runes. There was quest lines to craft a new level 25 epic. I farmed the BFD raid on reset with all the new friends that I was making. And then phase 2 came out, and well, it was a little underwhelming for me, so I got kind of burnt out from how much I played in phase 1. And then for phase 3, with the level 50 cap, it was kind of the same thing. I played for a little bit, but was a little underwhelmed, so I didn't play too much. But then level 60 came out, and I was like, okay, I can finally get to max level, so I'm ready to grind, and I grinded. I leveled the normal way, got to 60, grinded lots of dungeons, and did the very long quest line for the full 0.5 set gear. And if you've ever done this, you know it is not a quick grind. So it took a lot of effort, and then the first raid Molten Core finally opens up, and that 0.5 gear was completely useless because of the new mechanic which made fire-resistant gear required. I was so pissed, and so were a lot of people. It felt like betrayal from Blizzard, and that's where I dropped SOD. And from there, I started playing hardcore WoW. I played hardcore for like 6 months, but then the final patch was about to come out for SOD, and all my hardcore friends convinced me to go back to SOD, so I did, but they all played Alliance, so I had to restart. I was leveling normally until around like level 40, and then someone offered to boost me, so I took it, and I immediately got thrown into raid groups after that, and I loved it. This is the endgame WoW that I love playing, where there's just tons of raids to do that are all relevant, and not how it is nowadays, where you just do the newest raid, and that's it. But we did all get ready for the new Scarlet Enclave raid, and we blasted it. We were in like the top 25 guilds to beat the raid first. I don't remember exactly what number we were, but it was a great raid. I had a ton of fun farming this place with my guild for the next couple of months, but now it's over. And it was pretty much over immediately when the dev post came out. People are just not going to put in more hours when they know nothing more is coming. And I personally might play a little bit sometimes. Before it all ended, I got my hands on a bunch of tanking gear from the new raid. And our tank from Raid Simon has all these guides on soloing raid bosses. So, you know, since that's something I can do by myself, when I'm bored, I might just hop on and do it myself. But overall, I thought SOD was pretty good. But for a future Classic Plus, I would want a lot changed, mostly just more stuff along the leveling journey should be added. I want to see how they do a new zone. I want to see how they do a new dungeon where they have to make the entire environment from scratch. And maybe I should have mentioned this sooner within the video, but I think the power creep in SOD was too much. I would like damage numbers to be pretty much closer to how it was in regular level 60 Classic, and I just hope overall for the next server they just take some notes maybe from a certain private server. They know which one I'm talking about. You guys probably know too. There's a reason why that server keeps getting more popular every day right now. I'm also thinking about playing that server a little bit myself and like trying to do an unbiased review. I'm a little scared though because, you know, Blizzard could take that video down at any point. But I've seen lots of other big channels make videos on it, and those videos are still up, so maybe I'll consider it. Let me know about your thoughts on SOD down below, and if you made it to the end of the video, let me know what feature you would like to see added in a Classic Plus server. For me, I want playable goblins as their own race and not just the toy from SOD.